Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Self Connection with Ginny Brown and Kelly Pietro and the multitude of the greater good. In this
Kelly,
channel,
go ahead. Kelly does the question. Kelly asks the questions, and the multitude of the greater good answers them. But I am the mouth, you might say. They speak through me. The information actually comes right through my mouth. I don't get it in my mind and digest it. I translate it basically and send it right out through my mouth. So thank you for coming. And Kelly always has wonderful questions.
thanks, Jenny. Well, thanks for being here. And I feel like these questions are kind of like leftover from other episodes that we didn't get to, but also a new topic that I think will be interesting for people. But I'm going to start with the leftover questions, like kind of tying up loose ends on some topics around healing that, we've had a few episodes on healing. And it's funny, you probably don't remember this, Ginny, but before we started recording a few times ago, I started to read this one to you and you're like, wait, don't read it. They're saying it's a good one, save it. So I saved it.
I don't remember that, but
Yeah, so it's a long one.
it must be good.
Yeah, I guess there's a long lead in, so I'm just gonna read the notes that I have and then it'll come around to the question. Sound good?
It's fine.
Okay, so let's say someone is sick and they ask for prayers. Maybe they're facing some sort of hardship in life, but maybe they're not sick, but maybe they're asking for prayers or they're wishing to experience a better outcome. And consciously, they're intending to be open to receiving the healing through those prayers, or like they seem to be open, right? And allowing. And then they ask for help from the spirit world, like, they're asking for their own help, they're asking for other people to pray. And they do all the things to strengthen that intention. Maybe there's a mantra, maybe they create a crystal grid, or maybe there's daily prayer, whatever. Yet the healing that they intend for, or maybe it's not healing, maybe it's wanting to change their situation, maybe it's the manifestation that they wish for, does not come to pass. Why would that be?
It is important to understand, my dear, that when one comes to the earth plane, one plans what it is that one wishes to know, what wishes to learn, one wishes to understand. In our estimation, that can only happen when the opportunity arises. If one is interested in learning more about who one is, one will allow the circumstances to become quite optimal to learn who one is. If one is wishing to change a situation, one will allow the situation to become quite optimal to change and allow oneself to make the changes required. In our estimation, it is important that you understand that each one is in charge of each one's own self, one's own being, one's own allowing. One is open, of course, to energy, suggestions, prayers, outside influences, and outside energetic help. However, it is the one who is in charge of oneself who is responsible for making the changes. If one is interested in bringing oneself a change to one's earthly situation, a situation will arise to allow that to happen. It could be that on the spiritual level, they have experienced a situation as such, and the energy and the feelings will flow through, and then one will know how to proceed. If it is that it has not been in process previously, one will allow oneself the information in order to know how to handle the situation. In our estimation, it is how it needs to be. Each one is in charge of each one's own self and each one's own allowing. It is quite important to understand that as each one allows the energy and allows the love and care to flow, each one is helping oneself in a specific way. However, in order to make the changes that each one is asking or requiring, it's up to that person, that one, to make the arrangement within oneself to move forward in a direction of completion of the inability to move forward. In our estimation, it is how it needs to be. We can, however, let you know that in our estimation, it is quite right for each one to move forward. It is quite right for each one to connect with oneself and allow the allowing. It is quite right for each one to be in a space of openness and allowing and love and care of self. However, in order to allow the allowing, it is important to allow each one to make the changes within in order to allow the changes without. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, so what I think I understood that message to mean, because if you're new to our channel or to some of these concepts, it's like, if I'm hearing that channeling, I'm thinking, well, if I'm in charge, then I decide today I'm done with this illness. But I think what the multitude is trying to convey is the part of us in spirit is more in charge of that than the part of us in the physical realm who says, I don't like this, I don't want to do this.
Right. I think that's true, except the part of us in spirit works in conjunction with that part of us on the physical. So we cannot operate only from the physical or only from the spiritual. We need to allow ourselves to connect ourself on the earth plane with ourself and spirit to allow the information to flow, not only from spirit to self, but back and forth. It is important to understand that there is much more involved than one can understand on the earth plane. However, it is correct to understand that as one allows oneself's energy to flow from the spiritual to the physical self, it is also important that one be open to receiving the spiritual energy flowing to the physical self. When one is allowing oneself to work one in conjunction with the other, this physical self with the spiritual self and vice versa, then one is able to move forward in love of self, in care of self, in allowance of being, in allowance of loving, and in allowance of moving forward in the way that one wishes to complete. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, so, but like I've had friends who are, let's say they're spiritual and they will say, I'm allowing, I'm connecting, and they're in touch with their spiritual self on a, more intimate level than someone who's not doing that. And yet there's still the suffering. So could it be that it's multi-layered, like, well, the soul knows what it came here to experience, and it's going to experience that plan through illness, or it could also be there's a subconscious belief that's blocking them from actually receiving. They say, I'm open, I'm receiving, but maybe there's a small, tiny bit of doubt or low self-worth or some sort of belief there that could be blocking it, or it could be a trapped emotion of who knows what that's underlying that illness, some other sort of energetic block that prevents them from healing or receiving. Is this these different examples I just listed.
Before you ask the question,
Yeah.
what keeps coming to me is that what are they open to? Are they open to themselves and their own energy? Are they open to external energy and expecting it to happen without them being in connection with themselves? Because the self in spirit is in connection with the guides and with others, other spiritual beings. It's the self in spirit that does the connecting, as I understand it. And then the self connection with this earth self, with the spiritual self, is open to all that energy and allowing all that energy. And you can say, I allow it, and I allow this, and I allow that, without actually feeling it and without actually allowing yourself to connect with that spiritual part of yourself.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to understand what are all the potential blocks. Like, in a very concrete way that someone could watch this and walk away and say, oh, okay, it could be a trapped emotion. It could be a subconscious belief that's lingering. It could be the disallowance of some part of self, which could look like A, B, or C. I guess I just want them to go a little bit deeper if they can on that, to give people examples of, so that they know what to work on. Or maybe it's not working on it. I don't know.
It is important to understand, my dear. Each one has set up for each one's own self the process by which they have allowed themselves to learn who they are. Some learn who they are by studying. However, that is a long, long process. Some learn who they are by experiencing, and that is a shorter, quicker process. However, it can, I'm getting the word upheaval. It can cause a great deal of upheaval in one's life. Each one has set forth their own and best way of allowing themselves to open to themselves. In our estimation, it is a matter of understanding that one can allow oneself to be open by breathing, by allowing, by being. It does not matter what they know. What matters is what they feel. If they are feeling that they are one in conjunction with another, it is quite different from knowing that one needs to connect with oneself in order to bring to oneself what one needs. It is a matter of working with the heart self. It is a matter of saying, this is what I need, this is what I want, and allowing the self to feel the feelings around the needing, around the wanting. It is that part of self that allows oneself to open. One can say, okay, I've read this book, I've read this book, I've learned this and I've learned that. However, it may be that that is a suitable experience or explanation for another that may or may not work for you. It is that part of self that says, this is what I know, this is what I need, this is who I am, and allow oneself to breathe in and within the process of allowing the connection. Does not matter what another says, does not matter what another does. What matters is what one knows for and about oneself. When one is ready to move forward, one does. One is able to move in a direction of love and care, and one is able to allow oneself the being of self. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay. I'm just gonna let that hang there and not try to analyze it. And let people sit with it themselves.
Yeah.
And this is a relevant question, but I want to make a distinction that I'm not, it's not a continuation of what we were just talking about. I mean, it is because it talks about healing, but this is like very specific about miraculous healing. So I'm talking about like someone was blind and now they can see. Someone was paralyzed and now they can walk. I'm talking about physical miraculous healing, what are the required conditions, or what conditions must exist in order for such miraculous healing to occur?
It's important to understand that if one has chosen to come to the earth plane to experience, one will experience those types of things. However, when one has completed one's process, one will release the need for such an experience. Therefore, it's like things will change. If one cannot see, one will be able to see. If one cannot hear, and the process has been completed, one will be able to hear. In our estimation, there are those things that are physical maladies and those things that are energetic maladies. The energetic maladies are able to complete a process and therefore become a miraculous healing. The physical maladies, on the other hand, are quite different and need to be worked with quite differently on the earth plane. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, so follow-up question to that. How can one have certainty around if their malady is purely physical or if it is energetic?
It's important to understand that when one comes to the earth plane, one has decided, and there is only one way to connect with oneself. And there is only one way to connect to find out the information, and that is to connect with oneself. Therefore, when one connects with oneself, one will allow the energy to flow, and one will allow the energy to heal, and one will allow the self to understand, therefore allowing the energetic healing that is required. When one allows oneself to go to another person, because they have heard that other person is quite a wonderful healer. Well, that's quite wonderful. And that person may be a wonderful healer. However, the original person may not be willing or ready to heal that obstacle on the spiritual plane. Therefore, there is some healing work to be completed before it's like the operation can be completed. Do not be concerned, all is love. And I don't mean operation as in a physical operation.
Yeah, that's whatever it is.
Yeah.
Healing. So that's interesting. So of course I think of Jesus and like he conducted multiple miraculous healings, but then what the multitude is saying is like, no, it's the individual who steps into the allowance of being healed. But then I wonder, maybe they had spiritual contracts to incarnate with Jesus in order for that to.
Right, right. I listen, just listen. I can tell you, my dear, that when it is that I was on the earth plane, I was ready to complete a process of love and care. Therefore, I was able to connect with another. And it's like in our estimation, because he's part of the multitude. It is important to understand that he was able to make this connection. As you say, it was a spiritual agreement. However, he was in agreement with himself as to what he needed to do or wanted to complete in his life process on the earth plane. If it is that he was ready to allow himself to expand himself to that level of completion of who he is, then he was ready to complete it for himself and help others. It is not a matter of allowing oneself to move forward in such a way as to say, I can heal you, I can heal you, I can heal you. It is a matter of moving forth in which to say, I am open, I am allowing myself, I am ready and willing to help another. And when one is ready and willing to help another, one allows the information to flow through oneself. Do not be concerned, all is love. Oh, and I can feel my hands getting tingly.
That's perfect. It's a good segue to the next topic.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you want to say something about that or talk about that or ask about that.
What?
What is tingling? Is that just the energy that?
As far as I know, it's just the energy that comes through. It's my for me, it just came through. And I didn't know what it was. I could feel all this tingling in the palms of my hands. So I was going to Reiki, not a Reiki, a chakra class at the local high school.
Yeah.
And so I asked the teacher what it was because it was pretty strong. You know, it's like tingling, but it can get to where it can be not hurt, but almost that strong. And so I asked her, she said that was Reiki energy coming through. I hadn't had Reiki, I hadn't had anything. It was myself being able to bring through what it was that I needed to do in my life. And I guess that's a perfect example of what Jesus and the multitude were saying.
Yeah. And I love that happened because it's on my list today to talk about Reiki attunements, any other sort of attunement, like,
Right.
I don't know, did you get attuned when he did Shambhala?
I believe I did. Yeah. But there were 2 levels to Shambhala. I only took the first level and I kept asking about taking the second level. They said I didn't need it. So I didn't go back for the second level.
Yeah, this idea that one needs to be attuned in order to channel healing energy, whether it's Reiki, Shambhala, I don't know, there's a bunch of others out there. Is that true?
Well, my opinion is that I think it's helpful to have information and to have support and a support system. But as far as actually needing an attunement, it is important to understand, my dear, that attunements help one on the earth plane connect with oneself in spirit. Therefore, it is very much helpful to have an attunement. There are times, however, when it is not necessary, but most beneficial. We would highly recommend that each one allow each one's own self to connect with oneself. And if Reiki is the perfect opportunity to do so, then we highly recommend a Reiki attunement. However, in our estimation, if it is that one is able to allow oneself to bring through that which is already who that person is, then it is not necessarily required. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Yeah, so the way I think about it is like, if Reiki is a healing vibration that exists in the universe, that going through the classes and having a teacher, the way I like to think about it is it allows the human part of ourselves to further and deepen our acceptance of, oh, I can do this, I can channel this energy. And maybe by saying, because this person empowered me, maybe that's just where we're at the time, that allows us to step into the allowing of that energy through our vehicle, our body. But for some people, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one way for us to open up to who we really are. And sometimes I think people aren't aware, or I would say 90+% of time, people aren't aware that these gifts are available to them. that they have them in the spiritual level. They are able to bring them through on the physical level, no matter whether you call it Reiki or whatever other kind of healing you choose to call it. But I think the gifts are there, we bring them with us, but we're not always aware that, for one, that they're there and that we are capable of doing it. Which brings me to something that we discussed on our last video. And I was talking about spiritual development classes, and I forget what else we were talking about. But I was thinking about it after we ended that call, and it's like, oh, I missed one important part, and it has to do with being aware that the spiritual development classes that I took helped me become aware of or open up to my own gifts. Now, I knew I had some gifts, but I wasn't aware of the, I don't know.
The breadth of it.
Exactly. I wasn't aware of just how how many gifts, how much, how expansive my gifts were. And the spiritual development classes helped me to do that.
Yeah. Well, I think though, what's good is like, you watch a video like this to learn that they're available to anyone at any time.
Yeah,
Just open up to it, especially for people who have desires to do that, but maybe they don't have the financial means. Some of these classes can get really expensive,
yeah. And,
Um,
and then once you do become aware of, then it's practice, practice,
yeah.
practice. And I like to talk about setting boundaries. So
Yeah. Well, is there anything you want to say about that, Jenny? Like guidance? About boundaries?
for me, what I did was I started once I became aware and was able to open to the energy and connect with other beings, which is far easier than one might think if one could have that ability. Is I started to do some automatic writing.
Mhm.
And what I was told to do was write out the question and then write the first thing that comes to your mind, the very first thing. So what happened for me was that I wrote out the question, and before I finished the question, I had the answer. So I needed to move up to the computer because I can type much faster than I can write. Um, but it was a matter of becoming aware of my own gifts, allowing them to be. But when you allow a spirit to come in, you don't know who's going to come in. And so I set some boundaries in that I only wanted of the light. I only wanted highest and greatest truth. I wanted accuracy. That was important to me. Um, and I always forget the fourth one, but it's important to set some boundaries as to who you do and do not want to connect with.
Yeah. Well, that's a good topic to explore a little bit because, you've helped me actually with that very topic. I used to have this long prayer, remember?
Yeah,
Before I would connect, it was like, and it was all my boundaries. It was like, only this, only this, only that, and this, and this. And it was almost like I had so many boundaries that I limited so greatly what I would allow through. And in terms of healing, like it felt like it hindered the process a little bit.
yeah,
Uh, but the one that snags on me a little bit is of the light. Now, I think I know why I say that because I know I say it out of fear because if it's not of the light, then it must be bad. But then I think about, well, if I'm helping someone on the soul level to heal, there's likely a shadow side that's at play. And if I'm saying only of the light, does that disallow the information about the shadow side to come through? And then is that disallowing some of the healing? I always have that question. Does that make sense to you, Ginny?
Yeah, but what happened for me one time, I was asking a question and this being came in and gave me an answer. Well, they gave me an answer that I wanted to hear. Oh, highest and greatest truth is the other one.
Yeah.
Gave me an answer that I wanted to hear, but it wasn't the truth. So I don't want just anybody coming in and telling me what I want to hear. I only want of the light, highest and greatest truth. Not that this person, this being wasn't of the light, it was just not giving me correct information. So I needed to set some boundaries and make sure that the information that I got was actually true. That it was the highest and greatest information, that it wasn't just someone's thoughts or ideas floating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna kind of word this a little bit and see what the multitude says, if you're okay with that.
Go ahead.
What are we disallowing when we limit our intention to not include of the light?
That's interesting. It is important to understand that energy is energy is energy. And whether one chooses to call energy light or just energy, it is how it is. In our estimation, if one does not allow the light, one cannot allow the energy, and one cannot allow the, it's like the flow of energy, as there's no energy to be seen or had in our estimation. It does not matter what you call it, whether you call it light, whether you call it energy. But if one is on the earth plane and expects oneself to connect with oneself, one needs to know that their own energy is that part that connects them with that and the all that is. Therefore, of the light is quite appropriate, as light is energy and energy is light. There are, however, those who like to make themselves known regardless of whether or not they are welcome or appreciated. Therefore, allowing of the light leaves out any mischievous well, energy. I had the word, but it flew.
It's so funny because you're getting all glitchy right now as we're talking about this.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll come through on the recording, but
Yeah, I don't see it here, so.
we've got some mischievous energy in our in our life. Okay, so that's good to know. I'm glad I asked that because it snags on me when I do say that prayer and I'm like, only that which is at the light, and I'm always like, I wonder.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I don't know, I was gonna say something. I hate when it flies like that,
I'm sorry.
but you know, it does when I channel, so.
Yeah. All right, cool, thanks. Okay, I have one more topic that I want to explore a little bit, just out of curiosity, and it's still in the realm of healing, but it's a bit off topic from what we're talking about now, and it's hypnotherapy.
Oh.
So, let's see, what do I want to ask though? How can we appropriately understand hypnotherapy from a spiritual context?
It's important to understand that when one is in a state of hypnotherapy, one is more able to access oneself and the higher levels of being. When one is on the When one is very much in connection with the mind self, one limits, in order to use your word, one limits oneself to being on the earth plane and wanting a connection. In our estimation, when one is in the state of hypnotherapy, one's mind is occupied elsewhere and does not participate in the wanting or the needing. One's heart self is open and allowing of oneself to connect with oneself and one's own knowledge and information on the spiritual plane. In our estimation, hypnotherapy can be quite helpful. It is also that part of self that says, hey, I'm here on the earth plane. I know what I know. I've lived many lifetimes. I've lived many experiences. I've lived much and learned much. Therefore, when I am ready, I will allow the information to flow through. And when one is in a hypnotic state, one allows that energy to flow through. In our estimation, sometimes it can be detrimental. However, most times it is quite enlightening and appropriate. Do not be concerned, all is love.
So I've been reading Dolores Cannon,
Yeah.
a book called Jesus and the Essenes. I think I'm saying that right. And, it's about, she had one of her clients under hypnosis and tapped into past lives. And one of the past lives was during the time where Jesus lived and taught. And she was part of his community, I guess. I just started it. And so I think I told you this, Ginny. So as I'm reading this book, I'm like, ooh, maybe I should try hypnosis for weight loss. Because I have some stubborn areas that no matter what I do, don't want to. And sure enough, the next day in my feed comes up this weight loss hypnosis. I was like, oh my God, okay. And it's like, is my brain somehow connected to my phone now? Are we one?
You bring up information on your phone, though, about hypnosis
No, I literally just
or on your
thought it.
computer? Really?
No, this happens to me all the time. And I'm like, is it my guides like answering the thought, or I don't know. And then ever since I've started doing it, I think I told you before we got on, like my stomach is just not right. Like I can't seem to eat anything.
Right.
I'm like, what is going on? Is it the hypnotherapy? I don't know. But they say like some people can be hypnotized and some people can't. And I had a teacher once who told me, no, that's not going to work for you. And so now that seed's been planted, but I'm trying to overcome like, well, I guess the question is, what is required in order for someone to be hypnotized, like of the self? What is required of the self to allow oneself to be hypnotized?
It is important to understand, my dear, when one allows oneself growth and growth processes, it does not matter what process or how it is received. What matters is the person receiving the energy is open to the energy. There are those who are allowing themselves to be hypnotized in order to allow themselves to connect. There are those who allow themselves to be hypnotized in order to bring through that which they already know. And there are those who are unallowable of any type of hypnotic state. It's like the word that keeps coming for me is fear. It's a fear of being out of control. Anyone who is unallowable of the hypnotic state is not open to knowing more of who they are or why they are. There are those parts of self that knows, and those parts of self that one does not know. It's like there's fear behind that. In our estimation, it is important that you understand that if one chooses to allow oneself to access oneself through the hypnotic state, then one is quite able to allow oneself to move forward. In our estimation, there are those parts of self that are quite well hidden, and sometimes they are released to the like mental self, the knowing self, during hypnosis. And sometimes those parts are like challenged. It's like, no, that's not me. I don't want that. I don't want to know that about myself. Therefore, that will stop the process completely. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, thank you. Does it arise another question when it comes to intention, manifestation, let's say like the vehicle is hypnosis or some other means. Like, okay, I'm going to use myself as an example just because I don't have a better one right now. Like for example, on the earth plane, I'm saying, oh, I would like to lose weight. Oh, let me try this hypnosis. And then the means by which I lose the weight is like my body is rejecting food. It's like in one end, out the other, like, and I'm having this experience of losing weight, but it's not enjoyable. So some might say like, oh, you have to like hone in on your intention around that and say, okay, I want to lose weight, but I want to lose it this way, and I don't want to lose it this way, and then you're creating all this intention around it in order to have the experience you desire. Does intention like when I say intention, I mean like the ego self that's here now on the earth plane. Does that level of intention that's created on the earth plane get honored every time when the manifestation comes through from the spiritual, or that doesn't matter?
It's important to understand each one sets forth one's own goals before coming to the earth plane. And if it is in one's ability to connect with oneself in that way, then one will connect with oneself in that way. In our estimation, it is that self that is in charge. The intention is quite wonderful. It helps one focus on who one is and what one wants. However, when one is in say, a physical distress, and one is open to allowing the healing, one allows oneself to connect with oneself. And if it is that one has arranged with oneself a way of continued healing, one will. However, if one is unable to have that connection, and it's like nothing has been prearranged, it is important to understand that it can happen in more than one way or not happen at all. It does not matter. When one intends, one is helping oneself to focus on what one needs and what one wants. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay. Last time I set out to lose weight, I got sick.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, do I need to strengthen my intention and make it different? Or am I really just not in charge on the physical level?
I think a lot of it has to do with what's going on with oneself and the spiritual level.
Yeah.
And how one manifests one's life on the physical.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember one time asking about weight because I would like to lose a good amount of it. And I was told something to the effect that it's like moving forward on the earth plane will help me lose the weight because it's not a physical thing for me. Like it's not eating too much food. It's not that type of thing. It's like a not allowing of myself to move forward in something I want to do or needed to do or had set out for myself on the spiritual plane for me to complete on the physical plane. Now, I haven't found it yet, but I'm open to it.
Well, that makes sense to me in like a association way. Like if you have all this potential that you've charted for yourself and you're not putting it out in the world, like where's the energy going to go? It's staying with you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That's how I interpret it when that's what came to me when you were saying it.
It could be that.
So maybe finally doing these videos, Ginny, will be the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, or some in-person things, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This is my last question because
Okay.
it kind of goes with what we're talking about. Okay, so there's that law of physics of is it maybe it's matter, but I wanted to say energy. What's the law? I was going to say energy cannot be created or destroyed, only change form. Maybe it's matter cannot be created or destroyed. I mean, it's almost one and the same, right?
Don't know.
So that's what comes to mind when we're talking about this. Like, okay, if the intention is created in spirit of Ginny, you're going to do A, B, and C in this lifetime, and you're not moving forward and you're not doing A, B, and C. If that energy has been created, but it's not out in the world, it's in you because it can only change form. I don't know. Is there any truth to what I'm asking? We're talking about? I guess that's the question.
In our estimation, my dear, when things are planned in the spiritual, they are not always completed on the physical. In our estimation, there is no real connection to one's ability to expand or contain energy or unplanned energy from unplanned energetic experiences. When one is on the earth plane, one has why can't I remember that? Free will. One has free will to do and choose what one wishes to do. And if one chooses not to complete a process that one has assigned, so to speak, to this current lifetime, then one will move forward differently and allow oneself to move that energy forward and experience it in another lifetime. It is not a matter of requiring oneself to complete all of one's processes. The earth plane definitely has free will, and each one is able to move forward within oneself the way one wishes. However, in our estimation, if one is willing to move forth and unable to complete a process, then one is able to make changes in whatever way they wish. Therefore, if one is moving forward and unable to access the energy required, one will allow oneself to change the experience, move the experience differently, allow oneself to be who one is differently, or move in a direction of love of self. And when one moves in a direction of love of self, then one is able to make the physical changes that one wishes. Do not be concerned, all is love.
You know what comes to mind, Ginny, as we're talking about this? Like, because I subscribe to these beliefs, right? And this idea that, okay, my spiritual self is in charge, really. I know we're part and parcel to our ego self, part of us that's here, but really it's our spiritual self that's in charge. And I kind of get annoyed and angry and resentful
Why?
because sometimes life doesn't go the way I want it to go. And I feel like I'm doing all the things and you know, and I feel like I'm connected to myself in spirit, but then like it's not going the way I want. And maybe it's a call to deepen my surrender to trust, or I don't know. But it's just annoying.
Well, what comes up for me when you say that is taking your own power and connecting with yourself in spirit and is working with your heart self and your head self. And the other part of what you're talking about, as I see, is giving away your power. You're giving your power away to your spiritual self without working your spiritual self or your heart self along with your head self.
Yeah, I do
That's
feel
all
like,
I know.
yeah, it does feel like a disconnect.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe like a lack of trust
Of what? Of yourself? Of your
that
spiritual
that
self?
me here can dictate that, like, I can be in charge on this level
Yeah.
of certain things, certain things.
Yeah. Well, that's like some people will say the ego, it's such a bad thing, the ego, but it's not. It's we need an ego to live on the earth plane. We're on the earth plane. We need to be able
Yeah.
to function that way. And that is where the ego comes in. Now, there are maybe an ego will begin to take over. That's something different. But we need to have an ego in order to function on the earth plane. Well, you work your heart and your head together. That's the goal, I think.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that-
that's all the questions I have. Do you have questions, Ginny?
I was going to say that's my 2 cents for today.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I don't have any more questions. I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure that I brought up that information of this how spiritual classes helped open me to who I really am, rather than just, I just wanted to clear that up from last time.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you did, because it's true, like like I think back to all of the classes that I took or the circles I sat in, it like helped me to learn that, like, oh, when this is happening, that's it, that's the connection. Or other people validating certain things that I'd be picking up when I was, more like the intuitive development stuff. Um, but and then even teaching, like when you step into the role of, like, I shouldn't say teaching, it's more like leading, right? But like leading experiences, like you even get even like a whole nother level of depth of understanding of it. So anyone who's like been practicing for a long time, I would say try leading something, leading a circle, leading classes, because what do they say about, like, when you teach something and you learn it even more or something like that?
Yeah, well, it's been true for me when I was teaching something. Yeah, I had to know it in order to teach it, so I learned more as I was teaching it.
Yeah. And I know, like, my intuitive development class, um, gosh, that was totally like a shove from the universe. I did not want to do that. But I kept waking up to, like, literally, I'd wake up from sleep and like the whole class was there, like written. And so I started taking notes, and it was, the topics came through. And then it would be like the week before class, I'd be like, okay, this is the topic. What are we talking about? And I would just kind of open up and start typing, and it was almost like automatic writing. The lessons just wrote themselves. And then, so that was one experience, but then like carrying it through was like another experience, like it's like the lotus flower, it's like writing it and then like leading the class and then like watching everyone else's experience. It was like, oh my gosh, you learn it in deeper and deeper ways. It's really cool. So yeah, definitely practice.
When you opened up and that information came through, where do you think it came from?
Well, my friend Ginny would tell me that it came from me.
From your own experience from past lifetimes, with the help of your guides, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And I would, before I'd sit down to do the lessons, I would say a little prayer, like just to connect with myself, to open up to that which is of the light, my guides, my angels, my ancestors, to and setting those boundaries of, I want the highest and best truth. I want accuracy, you know.
Yeah.
I'd say that prayer before I would write the lesson. So
Right.
Yeah, and I think that that can go for anything. Like, okay, so I was creating an intuitive development class, but if you're uh, a corporate executive and you have to give a presentation, and same thing, and you're not sure of yourself, like, sit down, say a little prayer, connect with yourself, call in some guidance,
Mhm.
ask for the highest and greatest truth, and then trust.
I'll do that when I write an email.
Yeah.
Because I'm not always so clear on the words that I want to use. So I'll start writing and all of a sudden I'll get this other word or phrase and it makes perfect sense. And I do that all the time. And I always am. I'm not amazed. I believe the information comes from me that I know this, but I'm always grateful. I'm always
Yeah.
grateful. So.
Thank you, past self Ginny, for guiding me now. Yeah. I I think it's cool. Like, and I've sat and intended to bring forth different skills, like what you're talking about, writing, or you can bring in skills from other lifetimes.
Right.
It just takes time and trust. Like, it's not like immediate. Sometimes I'm sure some people it is, but um
Mhm.
that's kind of a cool exercise to do too. Yeah, or like you're having a rough, if you know you're about to have a rough conversation with someone, to say that prayer and say, I want to keep me in my heart, you know.
Yeah, that's good.
Practical tools for everyday living here on the self connection.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
It's not woo-woo. It's not way out there. It's just a matter of uh, uh, caring and honoring yourself, caring about and honoring yourself.
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Well, Ginny, unless the multitude has any closing points,
Of course they do. We would like each of you to understand that as it is that each one goes and each one grows and each one allows, each one is sharing their love and care with each and every other one. As one completes processes on the earth plane, the energetic connections on the spiritual plane are quite, it's like quite important, quite open. Um, it's like the only words I can think of, because I can see it, but I can't. The only words I can think of is that your energy and your um, positive feelings feed the collective, and it joins in with all the rest of the energy and expands the energy in a higher and greater way. It is important to understand that each of you are capable and able of allowing yourself to be yourself. You are each able to expand yourselves, and you are each able to move forward in such a way as to heal the feelings. And as one heals the feelings, one allows the growth required to experience more and more. And as one allows oneself to experience, one contributes to the all that is. Do not be concerned, all is love. And that is the message for today, the closing message.
well, thanks, Ginny. Thanks for channeling, and thanks to the multitude for guiding us on this crazy journey of life.
We've planned it. It's
Mm,
like, don't worry about it. We've planned it.
no, thanks for planning it. I need it.
That's good.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Ginny, and thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time on the Self Connection.
Bye-bye.